I'm Roz Hall, and I work as a research and evaluation consultant at the West Media Centre and the Evaluation Trust, as well as other organisations. Today I wanted to just say something, I think, about quality and who defines it. For me, I think that it's really clear that we all probably would acknowledge that quality is actually really subjective, if not intersubjective. And I think that even though we'd all acknowledge that in theory, perhaps there's a need for us to put it into practice a bit more. And I think by doing that, what we will enable ourselves to do is to break away from that very old modernist notion of a cultural hierarchy in which one notion of quality is something very fixed, is seen as necessarily of greater significance culturally than other cultural forms. In one of the other contributions, someone referred to something as art with a capital A, and I think that's what I mean, is that we refer back to somehow something being higher, something being better, whereas actually I think if we take on board the theory that we probably all believe in around intersubjectivity, what we really have to acknowledge is that different forms of cultural production and exchange are of significant quality themselves. And actually, I think that there's a quote from Nick Stanley which I found really useful as a reminder of what it is I'm trying to articulate, but not very clearly. And he says something like, the visual world is not to be correctly, it's the source of many disputes we have with one another about the nature of the world around us. And I think that's a key notion, really, in terms of thinking about the cultural exchanges that we can stimulate and how we can learn to not assume a certain cultural hierarchy and try to reach an equally informed understanding of some of the cultural exchanges we might be less familiar with than the ones that we are familiar with. So I know some people, when I start asking questions at this point in what I'm saying around process and product, because I think there's a tendency to fall back to that debate as well. For me, I'd like to think that that's a debate that's sort of in the past, really, and has been in lots of ways transcended by the idea that Suzanne Lacey really has made really clear. It's about the way in which process and product can't really actually be disciplined from each other. They're part of the same thing, and so actually to try and separate them and maybe set them up against each other is quite a nonsense. I think by moving beyond that whole notion of quality as something as ultimately fixed, and by moving beyond that debate around process and product in that sense of them being somehow binary oppositions, which doesn't make much sense to me. I think that by moving beyond those things, what will happen is that we will no longer sort of limit the potential there is to really nurture the development of unique practice and production. Because I think unique practice and production is really only ever informed by, and only really innovative and new and exciting when it's informed by very distinct and unique experiences. And I think that very often what we do when we try to apply some sort of external cultural hierarchy onto the exchanges that we encounter, what we actually do is to stifle the potential there is to develop really unique and exciting work that people might make. So for me, that's the key thing, really. I think bound up with that is also, I think there's also some weird sort of ideas around how far a process is, for example, artist-led, and how far it's participatory. And those things, similarly, I think we need to stop thinking about them as being necessarily binary opposites. Similarly, I think there's an assumption that if something's more participatory, it's inevitably the fact that the participants are the authors. What I've seen recently in the West Media Centre, lots of really exciting processes that they actually transcend that set of assumptions as well. So the artifacts of a process might very well be ones where the author is the artist, but actually what happens within those processes is a lot more participatory sometimes than some work that I've witnessed that has been framed as being participant as author work. So I think that what we do is break out of those very old ideas, and seem like very old ideas to me, that are based on those sort of binary opposites, because I think that's one of the other things that stifles the potential there is to develop more interesting and unique ways of working.